Hey everybody, this is my 125 gallon native tank and my long awaited filter has arrived. It's 4 days late, but it finally got here, so we are going to get in here and start doing some work on that. When I came down this morning, if you will see how little bit of water flow I've got right now, I had even less than that. My surface skimmer was still above the surface here, so if you can hear that, it's definitely sucking air. And in just a moment, you'll see what I saw when I came down this morning. That's what I saw when I came down this morning. Intermittent water flow. Now, fortunately, this tank has a pretty big power head in it. In fact, I've got two power heads. I've also got pretty big air stones, so I'm not worried about the health of the tank overall. But, you know, I do need to get that filter up and running again. I need to get the water circulating and water flowing around the tank more vigorously. I am having issues with cyanobacteria and algae from the tremendous amount of lighting I've just slammed onto this tank all of a sudden, but that's a different issue. Today we're going to worry about the filter. I don't think I'm going to do too much in the way of showing you the installation of the filter and all that. This stuff's easy enough to do, but I do want to talk a little bit about the filter for a moment. That is a SunSun 304B. And I'm not sure why I bought the 404. It's got the same water capacity, 525 gallons per hour, and it's got 4 trays in it. It's got the UV clarifying light, and it's basically everything that the 304B is. It's just in a slightly narrower case, and it's a little bit taller. Otherwise, it's pretty much identical in parameters to the SunSun 304B, which is the common one that everybody has and that everyone's familiar with. In fact, there's a lot of other brands out there that are knockoffs of this one. So the way this works is SunSun, I don't know if SunSun is the parent company. It's probably not. It's probably another company that actually owns who manufactures these. But all of the filters you see out there that are very similar to this are this filter. Other companies simply buy them and slap their sticker on it or slap their brand name on it or whatever. Similar to Top Fin products. If you get Top Fin filters from PetSmart, those are really just Tetra Whisper filters, and they're just branded for the store brand for PetSmart. But you're basically buying a Tetra Whisper filter when you do that. So the SunSun filters are the generic filters. You know, the SunSun, I don't know if that's the brand name or what, but they're just real basic, simple filters, and you really get your money's worth out of them. These things last for years. The only reason I'm having issues with this one is because I ran the UV light 24/7 for like 2 years, and it just burned up the insides, and all the trays are all destroyed and everything. So rather than spend 3/4 of the cost of a new filter buying new trays, I'll just spend the full price and get a whole brand new filter, and it will be the 304B this time, which will make it interchangeable with my other filters. So if I ever need to swap out trays or hoses or anything like that, we won't have any problem with it. So I will put a link down below. I always buy it where you get the package deal. It costs $10 more, but for that $10 you get a package of bio rings, you get ceramic rings, and then you get the coarse pre-filters and all that stuff that comes with it too. So for an extra $10 you get about $20 worth of additional junk that you're going to need to buy to go in the filter anyway. So I always get the package deal, and it's still less than $100 for the whole thing, and it's really worth it. So let me get on with putting all that together, and we will come back and have a look at what that looks like once it's up and flowing the way it's supposed to. I'm not going to put the spray bar on it. I'm going to do it the same way I've got it now. But the way this was flowing before, I had water splashing all around. I mean, it was splashing onto this piece of wood, so it'll be interesting with this wood here whether or not that's actually going to be getting into the spray of the water and we get some really good vigorous splashing activity. I'm definitely going to need to put something in front of that to hide the incoming. I guess I could put like a potted plant or a little flower pot or something up there, and that would hide that. Anyway, let me get on with it, and we will get back and see what that looks like once we got a little bit more vigorous water flow going. So sit tight, and I'll see you in a minute. All right, everybody, I've got the outlet moved at the moment, but I mean, that's it. That is the new filter, and that ain't right. when I hooked this up and I had the old filter on it before I got this reduction in water flow, I had water splashing out of here. It was like a little, it was just a lot of water. It was way more than this. There's no way that's 525 gallons an hour coming out of that right now. So I was hoping to save myself the trouble. I was fortunate enough, I guess you could say, that the manifold right here, the part that actually plugs into the unit itself, is the same as the 404B. So this is the original manifold and hoses, and that's the difficult part of getting this set up, is putting those hoses together and untwisting them and getting these fittings, you know, watertight and all that kind of stuff. So I was hoping I'd be able to save myself the trouble by just putting the new filter bottom on there and then just attaching the existing hoses. But since this is the kind of water flow I'm getting, I don't see what other choice I'm going to have except to go through and really just redo all of the hoses and everything. So if I can avoid killing myself as I back up here, you can see some of the mess I've got so far. So here's the 404B, that's the old filter, some of the stuff that came with it, the biomedia I was talking about, I'm not even going to use. But this box contains all of the hoses and fittings and all the little plastic, you know, fittings and the spray bar and all that kind of stuff is in that box. So I'm going to have to start working on getting all that put together. And once we've got the whole thing set up that way, we'll go ahead, switch that out, and see if that's not where we're getting the reduction in flow. It's going to be a bummer if all I had to do was pull that thing apart and clean those hoses out, and it would have made my old filter run just fine. Although, as I said, the insides of it were all torn up. I don't want to dig them out right now, but if you actually look at what the try to do this one-handed without making a mess in here. That's what the little downspout part of the pipe is left. The only part that's left of it is the corkscrewy part, the thicker pieces that actually made the, you know, the water swirl, and it's just gone. Every single tray in this whole filter looks like that. So the water, when I change the filter out, the pad on the bottom, the actual filter part of the filter, usually doesn't have nearly as much filth and crud on it as the stuff near the top, because the water simply wasn't flowing to the bottom anymore. So as I said, it was time to get a new filter. I don't regret having to do this. What I do regret having to do is get in there and put all these hoses on. So that's going to be my next part of the project. So sit tight and we will see if we can't get this thing flowing properly. All right, everybody, I'm going to try to do this before my arm gets any more tired. To get these hoses hooked up, they're really kinked and coiled up when you get them. And so one thing you can do is soak them in a bucket of hot water. Another thing you can do is simply get the one end attached, get the valves closed so that the water stays in there, and then just fill these up with hot water. You can see the almost all the way up there, and just let it hang for a little while, and that will help just straighten everything out. Plus, if you act quickly once you're done, these will still be warm and soft and fairly easy to work with. And when you are installing them onto the plastic bit that you shove this over, it helps to run that under some hot water for a few minutes, and that way the water on it will help to lubricate it, but the heat will actually soften it up and allow it to expand and slide right over. And then when you screw the little lock nut down on it and it cools down, it'll shrink and tighten on there, and you'll get a really good solid seal on there. So that's just the way I do it. You might do it differently. Again, you can soak it in a bathtub of hot water, a bucket of hot water, or whatever. I just close the valves on the end, fill it with hot water out of my little watering can there, and I just let it hang for a little while, and that softens it up and straightens those out. So I'm going to get on with it, and I'll see you back over at the tank. Alright, one more little thing to note. That is new. I've never seen this little bracket on the plastic for the SunSun filters before. That, presumably, this is what flows into the tank. I gotta swirl this around and get it, you know, into the tank, and that presumably goes over your back rail, and you can tighten your thumb screws down to lock it into place, which is awesome, because one of my big problems with these is that the hose in the back will twist and pull, and every time you move it, it does that, and now you're squirting water somewhere different, and your spray bar gets knocked out of place. So that's pretty nifty. I don't know if I'll be able to use it because, I'm going to have mine elevated up above, but I might be able to do something with that, so we'll see. All right, I'm going to get back to it. All right, everybody, let that be a lesson to you. The inflow, now I knocked my bottom piece off of there, so the water's just shooting straight down. So these inflow hoses, whether it's the hose itself, again, I mean, that's what we're supposed to be seeing coming out of this thing. It should be like a fire hose. Well, maybe not quite a real fire hose, but it should be at least, a garden hose on full blast coming out of there easily, what this filter should be putting out. And that little trickle we were seeing before was just ridiculous. So, considering everything I switched out, at first I thought it was the pump mechanism and the housing in here was just all clogged up and gunked up with grunge and everything. And so even though you can take it apart and clean it, I figured it would be easier just to go ahead and replace it, since I already showed you the trays were all messed up and everything else. And yet we still got almost no flow and no change in the flow whatsoever. So the only thing that was different was switching out these inflows. So that's got to be what it was. Those hoses over time get clogged up, and it might not have been the hose necessarily. It could be these valves in here. This is when you pull this lever up, it's a valve that closes these off and stops the water from flowing. So possibly those valves get all grunged up. I don't know. But we've got a complete new filter on there. The only thing in here that was in the other filter is the biomaterial. My bio rings and my little pot scrubbies and all the little plastic beads and all that stuff got switched over. But otherwise, that is all completely brand new filter material. And both the intake and the outflow have these clamps on them, so you can clamp them to the back of the tank and secure them in place. So I really like that, and I think for now at least we're just going to keep it like this. We're not going to worry about putting that elbow on there and having it squirt out sideways like we did before, at least until I can figure out a way to get this set up into a proper place. I also forgot I was topping the tank off while I was busy doing something else, and if you'll notice, it is, oh, there's my little piece of plastic floating right there. If you'll notice, we're right up to the top of the tank, so this is a little more full than it should be, but we're going to have to figure out something to do with that, because, I mean, I got water all over. It was spraying everywhere when I hooked that thing up. So, there you go. New filter. Next step will be to do the ChemiClean treatment just to get some of that grunge out of there, and then we will have to get some kind of off-flux grazer or like an algae eating, scraping type fish, something like that in there to start working on getting some of this algae now that my Chinese algae eater's dead. And again, I'm not completely opposed to the idea of possibly getting another Chinese algae eater to put in there. I know I said I'd never get another one of them, but if I'm not mistaken, in that video where I said I'd never get another one, I did put the caveat in there that, never say never. Who knows what circumstances may lie down the road. But as far as I could tell back then, I could never foresee a circumstance where I'd want another one of those fish. But here we are just a few years later, and I'm already kind of talking about putting another Chinese algae eater in here, because they really, really, if you can put up with them, and if you've got a tank where you're not going to get other fish beaten up and eaten by them, they really do a good job of keeping your tank clean. So anyway, that'll be a video for another time. Now that we got everything up and moving, we got the plants floating around and flowing a little bit, and most importantly, we got good vigorous circulation and water flow going on in the tank, so I'm happy. That was my project for today, and now maybe a little bit later we'll do a water change and get the tank cleaned up and all that kind of stuff, but getting this filter changed out was my first priority. So there you go. Make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss anything I got coming up. You never know what it's going to be with me. Thanks for watching this one. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, this one is my 125-gallon native tank. Thanks again, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.